Folks, Tony from Weekly Controversies here. This week's episode contains stuff that some viewers and listeners may find distressing. And if you or anyone you know are going through anything at all, please feel free to reach out to the Weekly Controversies Instagram, the FiveMarks Instagram, the FiveMarks Twitter, my personal Instagram, Facebook, wherever, because you're not alone and we would love to help if you need help in any way, shape or form. And thank you again for listening, and we hope you continue to follow us. And just remember, it's okay not to be okay. Hello, everybody, and welcome to episode 6 of the Weekly Controversies podcast. I am, as always, Tony.
And I am J.O. Brown.
And we have not yet got cancelled. I am shocked. I am shocked and appalled that we have not got cancelled yet.
Tony, we've done well.
We're doing well. We're doing well. And this week, we're going to jump into the dark histories of wrestling families. But before we do that, we're going to give our honest reviews of the Iron Claw, because we've all seen it. So anybody that's joining us, that's going to watch this when it goes up on Friday, this is your spoiler warning. This is a spoiler warning. Although saying that, it's much like saying that you're talking about Titanic and that's a spoiler warning. If you don't know what happened in the Titanic and it's spoiled on you, then what fucking rock have you been hiding under?
Exactly. So if you are walking in blind to watch this movie and you've come on to this episode of the Weekly Controversies to find out what happened in the movie, please don't. We love the views, but please don't, for your own sake. Do not spoil yourself. Go and see the movie. If you want to comment on this and actually talk about your reviews and your opinions, that would be more than welcome. But please, for your own sake, do not get spoiled watching this. So I'm going to hand over to Rob, because Rob is the freshest of us all, because he only seen it about an hour ago. Yeah.
Literally, I'm literally only in the house
Rob,
10
I'm going to pass the stick to you for this.
Well, thank you very much for having me, guys. And as I say,
welcome back. You were absent last week.
I was indeed, unfortunately so, because these things have to happen, unfortunately. But glad to be back.
Copyright and all that.
But yeah, this film, as I say, obviously, I honestly didn't really know too much about the family going into this. So before I went into the film, I read a bit about them and their history and what's went on with their family. And this film was an absolute. For me, it hit so many spots and so many levels, because without spoiling too much, obviously, if you don't know about the history of the family, obviously there were a few deaths in the family and things like that. But as I say, that's what really got to me most, because I'm quite an emotional person myself, and these were very hard to take. But the wrestling side of things, not seeing what went on or what goes on in wrestling and on the outside of it as well, is really good to see, especially if you're someone who isn't really into wrestling too much and wanted to see this film anyway. This is a very good insight into professional wrestling and to see the ins and outs of what goes on off the cameras and on the cameras.
Yeah, like I was actually going to jump in and say, like, from watching it, and we know the Von Erichs are, 70s and 80s based wrestlers. These are people who back in the day, was very well known, especially with the Fabulous Freebirds and the rivalry they had. Like, that was one of the biggest things in wrestling at the time. And there was pure hatred in a way, and it was like one or the other had to get over, and whoever didn't was always going to be short-handed. But it just showed as well that in professional wrestling back in the 70s and 80s, that if you weren't the top guy, you were basically a nobody, and it was really important. It showed in this movie too, that when, I forget the dad's name, but the dad basically said, I want the world championship in this family, and he would do nothing, even get his son David, who wasn't into wrestling, he was more of a musician. He got him into wrestling because he really was desperate to have that championship, because we know, like, in professional wrestling of nowadays, in modern era, there's so many companies, there's so many championships that everyone can win, and that's great because there's more opportunities. But back in the day, it was so limited. And if you weren't the top guy, then you just, in the eyes of the public and even the bookers, the makers, you just weren't good enough. even though they probably were good enough in the eyes of the bookmakers, they just weren't good enough. So it just showed a different side of professional wrestling that a lot of people still don't know about to this day.
Yeah, like I know we're going into season 5 of Dark Side of the Ring, and that shows the dark side of wrestling. I don't know if they've now got an episode on that yet, have they?
Not
Have they
yet.
got an
Well,
episode
they
on Dark
have this
Side yet?
movie, so I wouldn't say they will because they've had this movie.
Probably
and
why
so-
they didn't list them as an episode. But I mean, you could probably do a 3 or 4 parter on them. Probably do a whole season on them if you wanted. Because they're just they're probably one of the unluckiest families in wrestling.
Mm.
But I mean, it dealt with the 7 deadly sins of mental health, addiction, depression, alcoholism, you name it, it dealt with it.
Yeah.
Abuse in the family. They didn't show the full stint of it in the film because they would have had to up the rating. But the father, if you read into it, was an abusive prick in every sense of the word. He pushed and pushed and pushed and literally wiped out his whole family, and all for a belt that he never won, that he wanted to win. And the film didn't hold back. It told the story as we know it. I did say to a few people that asked me that the only thing that pissed me off, that was like it away at me, was Texas Tornado Kerry Von Erich. Anyone that knows him knows he wrestled with half a foot. But in the film after the bike accident, he was missing like, I'd say, a quarter of his leg.
Mm-hmm.
So I don't know if they did that to emphasize don't fucking drink and drive or whatever the case was, but that was
I
my
think
only.
though, like I think you know yourself though, Tony, with biopics, you can't tell the full story. I think everyone who goes into a biopic, no matter what it is, they can't tell the full picture. That's for for you to search and for you to look up in different documentaries and stuff.
There's
I
a
get
lot of
why Kevin
documentaries
didn't
out
want
there.
everything to be, out there. Like you can tell some stuff because people probably know the rest of it. But
like there is a lot of documentaries out there. I don't have one in this point. I have one upstairs in the attic about the Von Erichs, not about their WCCW. It's like the Triumph and Tragedy, I think it's called. The two discs found in a charity shop. The things you find in a charity shop is unbelievable. But no, it was a really good film. Like it told the story really well, and I felt it could have been longer, but I think it felt longer, but it wasn't. But it fit in when it needed to fit in. It got its story across about the family, about the ups, the downs, about how a father had this favoritism list, which no father has favorites when they have kids. They love their kids equally. So the fact that this father was like, "Oh, you want my favorite today, but tomorrow you could be my favorite," is like, you know what I mean?
Yeah.
And he also, in some scenes, he did come off hypocritical as well, which they when they wanted to expose him, they exposed him.
But I hate though as well that the dad forced wrestling on these kids at the time, on the Von Erichs, and it's like some people don't really see the side of Kerry's side of he wanted to be in the Olympics. Unfortunately, he couldn't because of I think it was the Cold War. I don't want to sound stupid when saying that. I think around the time was the Cold War.
I should have been paying attention. I think it was just after it was the war with the communists with Russia. And they didn't want to send their participants to Russia because the Summer Games was in Russia that year. So they went and sent in America. No, obviously other places went, but America didn't. And obviously Kerry was training for shot put. And he came back and the dad was like, "Oh, we never got shot put. Wrestling." I'm like, really? Really?
Yeah, it is that. Like, not all of them wanted to do it, but he forced it. Yeah, you probably think as an athlete, Kerry was probably the most gifted. He really was. He was the athlete in the family. He was the one that you looked at, and he could have done a lot of things. Even probably if he did go to the Olympics, he could have made his whole namesake from that, Summer Olympics. So when I see the dad trying to force that on him and force that on David, it's like, come on. But back in the day, it's not like you have it's nowadays where you can stand on your own 2 feet and do whatever you want to do. And even when it comes to your family can only give you advice. They can't force you what to do. Back in the day, you had to listen to the man on the seat, basically. And it was that's what it was like back in the pointing fingers, tell them what to do, and go, right, this is what you're doing. You can't say no. That's why they were afraid of him. They might be big, huge guys and could probably toughen up and say, "No, Dad, I don't want to do it." But they couldn't. They were just too scared of him.
Yeah.
Well, they were afraid of him until they weren't afraid of him, because in the film we see Kevin reaches his breaking point and he goes to try and kill the dad.
Yeah.
No, of course, but it was too little, too late though as well, Tal, for him to go
that's what this is
fuck
it.
this.
Because he'd rang the dad and he was like, I'm on my way, make sure Kerry's okay, I'll be there. And the dad couldn't give a fuck one way or another.
Yeah, pretty much. And that's where almost the sort of favoritism came in, because obviously, like, you know, sort of Kevin was like basically his favorite from the start type of thing. And then for him to sort of have that, you know, in his head all that time. And obviously, yes, you know, there was ups and downs between, you know, between the brothers, between, you know, obviously, but they were all still together. And the fact that, like, you know, obviously with, you know, with what had happened, you know, with obviously with the brothers and that, and then obviously, you know, losing the last one, the fact that he was the last remaining brother from them, and obviously it was just pent up frustration on his part against his dad, because obviously he wanted to get his dad to pick him up, to look after him until he seen him, and then all that was just built up emotion once he heard that gunshot, and that was it.
That was the break point. That was the trigger. Yeah, I mean,
Yeah.
when you talk Von Erich, small people are throwing around you and they'll talk about Fritz, they'll talk about David, Kerry, Kevin, but it's the never heard one's about the mother, one's about Jack, one's about Michael. They're the ones like that you were like, how I mean, I don't think they explain what happened to Jack. I think it was mentioned, but I don't think it was given as much explanation as the others were, just because I think Jack was at such a young age. But to see how they went, like, I think they all could have been avoided one way or another, but I think the one that could have been avoided the most, and I know it's easy saying it now, we went back there, we went like with the family, it was David's. Because if you had have listened to Kevin and gone and get a check instead of going to Japan, he could have been alive. But he didn't want to disappoint his dad. His dad said you can't be a world champion without going to Japan. So he didn't want to disappoint his dad. So we went to Japan. Not one full well. He probably had something wrong. I'd say the flying didn't help his intestines either if there's an internal bleed on it.
Yeah. Now I actually got mixed up with the two brothers there. I forgot that David's the one who was the talker in the
David was the one that was really good.
Michael was the one that was the musician. So I actually apologize about that. But the David thing as well, it was like David was building momentum, and then he got the opportunity to tour with Ric Flair and have the opportunity to go to Japan and all these different things. But in a way, he wanted to impress his dad, and then of course he took the steroids and stuff, and it just got too much for him. And it's scary though, because Kevin would have definitely known something, but all he could have done was just be there for him, and any brother would be like that for their siblings, to be just there for him, give him advice and all that. But it's just tragic, because you could have looked at all of these, you know, careers that could have been massive. You know, David could have been probably a big star in Japan, because he wasn't a bad wrestler himself, and that's the thing about them. They weren't all bad wrestlers. They were getting up there on top of the card, no matter if the dad forced them or not. You know, they were actually going up there and giving it everything and performing for the people. You know, so when I see like David being like the first one to pass away, and he could have had the potential to be big in Japan, probably one of the first US stars. If you know me, he could have been one of the first US stars to go over to Japan and break that whole Japan and USA connection. You know, that at the time that wasn't really, if you know. So you never know what career he could have had. But it was just tragic how it ended for him.
And it is, you put it, it is a tragedy. And we've all seen the film, we've watched it, we've all got different opinions. The one thing I took away from it was, and I know it was a different time, and I know that's the reason she didn't speak up, but the mother has to hold some responsibility alongside the father.
The man seemed like she didn't give a fuck.
You just step back and watch the abuse. She may as well have pulled the trigger herself.
Yeah.
And then in one scene, I don't know how true it is, but in one scene, she was saying, I can't wear that dress again because I've already worn it to a funeral.
Yeah.
I don't know how true that is, but like that's the mindset she's in about a dress, not the fact that she's lost yet another son.
Yeah, but she was as afraid as they were of the dad. Like, she was. You can even see it. Yeah. She was really afraid, especially at the start and stuff. She didn't really open her mouth and say, like, because she was concerned about him buying the car, even though he didn't really have money, and he thought himself he was going to be world champion and make that money back, and it never turned out. But she never, like, really took control of any situation. She just let them do what they do, and she just minded her own business. And that was kind of a thing as well back in the day. It was, you always had to listen to the man, and it never really mattered on what the woman would say, you know, it was because the man had the power back in the day. So she was as afraid as the brothers were.
Yeah, and you could see every scene that was done in that film, that how afraid of him she was, and that even whether it was whenever they were having a funeral, like even though she wanted to cry at the funerals and things like that, she was just holding everything back because of the fact that it was a sign of weakness and not in those day and ages type of thing, and that where like if you were seen crying, especially as a man, if you were seen crying, it was a sign of weakness. Even to this day, that's why like I say I hate the stigma of the fact that people say like, oh, men shouldn't cry. I was like, of course they can cry. Do you know what I mean? Everyone should be able to cry, and that's what I think. The scene, I think towards the end was very emotional for me of the fact of obviously the two sons coming to them and saying we can be your brothers. To their dad, and that was a big one for me.
I was actually going to say, when we're talking about things taken away from the movie, I think one of the things that I took from the movie was, of all the brothers, Michael, the musician, was the one who wasn't really supported by either of the parents. Like, the mom didn't really want him to be a musician and do gigs, and the dad would be like, oh, well, you're getting paid. And he was like, yeah, I'm getting paid. But he wasn't really sure if he wanted them to do it because, as we all know, he wanted all of them to be wrestlers. So it took then the brothers then to bring him to the gig and then actually go and, have a good time, get paid to do the things that he loved. And I'm not saying this because I feel sorry for the whole family, but just him in particular, if it just seemed like, other than the brothers, he never really got looked in with his parents, and I felt so bad because he was one of the youngest ones, and if you're one of the youngest ones, right, from someone who's a baby in my family, you're the one that should be most looked after. You're the one that has to be walked up to be intelligent, to be confident, to get advice from your loved ones, and he only got that with his brothers. With his parents, he never got anything. Like, he got nothing. So then when he then became a wrestler, he had no choice. And but what happened to him in that incident in the match, and to be the way he was, like, it's just horrible. It was so horrible to see. Now, the actor who played him played brilliantly, and by the way, they all played brilliantly. Jeremy Allen,
they did. The casting choice for the film was phenomenal.
Yeah, honestly, Zac Efron, I remember him from being a Disney Channel, and to see him being as bulked as he was just incredible. The formation he put into that movie was great. But they all played brilliantly, and you know what though, the performances as well really also told the story, because that's the main important thing as well with movies. You have to show your performance to tell the movie also. And Michael's one really kind of struck me a lot, from someone who is young myself and who always wants to achieve dreams and do my own thing and achieve my goals. And unfortunately for Michael, he couldn't do any of that.
And then the one thing he wanted to do was taken away from him when he did his shoulder, and
Yeah,
he had a stroke. He had,
yeah.
Was it a stroke that the shoulder injury led to? Something like that.
It was something like that.
Yeah.
It was
some
kind of a rare kind of condition that they had, where it was obviously that in the film where it was complicated type of surgery type of thing, where obviously it was that complicated, the fact that he passed from it.
And the thing is, most people will tell you, like, films like that don't touch on that, and there's nothing to take away from it. There's nothing there. That and a film about old school people can teach the new school, but it's the same thing that's happening there still happens today, and that's the one thing that's not talked about in a big deal. And when it is talked about, it's a thing that gets laughed at for some reason. It's men's mental health.
Yeah.
Like men can cry too. Men can be depressed. Men can break down just like a woman can break down. But the women get more talked about than the men.
Yeah.
And then when the man tries to talk, they're like, you be grand, you're a man. Yeah. You're expected to be able to handle it yourself because you're a man. And we seen in this film, when they were left to handle it themselves, they couldn't do it. Now, Kevin had Pam, and I think Pam died recently, if I'm not mistaken, or if she's still alive. He might have had Pam,
I don't know
sure.
if she passed away, no.
I can't remember what I read this screen at the end. There's no, he's a big family and his ranch, like he planned. But he had Pam. But you could even see when he was with Pam in the early stages how innocent he was. She was like, oh, you haven't done this before. That kind of way. And it was even her that was like, you need to speak up and tell your dad to stop. Your dad's going to tear your family apart. You need to speak up to him.
Yeah. And she was the outside looking in too, Pam. And she is as big as a character or a person in that story than any of the brothers too, because of the fact that she could see what they didn't want to accept. And it was for her to tell Kevin, listen, you have to stop all this. You have to stop your dad. And then, as we talked about, it was too little too late because they were all passed away and he was literally the last one left. And it was like, in a way, he was probably mentally done with his family. He was like, I've only got Pam now. And then, as you said, Tony, he promised the ranch, he got the ranch, he built an incredible family himself. And even what's even
14
brilliant about
grandchildren and
his
4
family,
kids.
yeah, but what's even brilliant about his family too was that they got into wrestling, but as what he did, he didn't force it like his dad did.
It was done
He
the
just
proper
let
way.
his kids go and be kids. They watched wrestling as kids, as we all did, and then they just fell in love with it. He never forced it. He never did anything like that. He did it the right way, and he can say to himself that he probably is a better dad than his dad ever
Yeah.
was.
Yeah, hands down.
And I think that's my takeaway from the film is that not every child turns out like their abusive father. Because Kevin turned out to be, by all standards, an amazing father and husband. No thanks to his upbringing. No thanks to his upbringing. But he turned out for the better. And I think largely that's thanks to Pam.
Yeah.
But he did
was a
turn
big
out for
part
the
of it.
better.
Yeah, absolutely. I was going to also mention about even the men's health, the mental health, and awareness is there, you know, and yeah, the thing with men growing up and everything is that we always have to be the tough ones, but there is a side of us as well that is soft and then can let out all our emotions and our frustrations and our upsetness and everything. And it's like in wrestling, it's with wrestling nowadays, you have like this big group, you know, this big family, and it's stupid to say, but it is true. You know, you've got people who can look out for one another and can actually talk, and it doesn't matter if it's a 5 or 10 minute chat or an hour and 2 hours. You know, you can have a chat and you can let out, you know, whatever's on your mind. Where back in the day, it was never really a thing. It never really was, because you seemed like a pussy probably back in the day, especially with the guys that were around. You know, your Harley Races and the Ric Flairs and all. These are guys who were the top guys who know, like Ric Flair is like a gimmick. He's himself. He's always been himself. So he was probably a type of guy where if he saw Von Erich cry and stuff like that, he'd probably laugh at him and go, "Come on, pussy, you have to get up." But you have to. They couldn't understand, and none of them understood because they were all in their own lane. But what I love about professional wrestling nowadays, even though we've seen over even COVID, we've had suicides before, which isn't great, but it's a family, and no matter what company it's in, it's a big family, and they all look out for each other, and that's what I love about it too.
And I mean, I think that's back in the 70s and 80s, there was the territories. So you had your territories in Texas, in Memphis, in New York. I think Jerry Jarrett was the Memphis person at the time.
Yeah.
I think he was. But back then it was like you could be on one show 1 week and then on the other side of the state the next week. You didn't have that build, that relationship, have that family, unless you were a tag team like the Free, like the Von Erichs, like the who else was around then that might have been a tag team. The Sheik and thing they were in the film. The Sheik and I think was it the Sheik and Koloff?
I don't know. Was Koloff in it? I know Sheik was in it.
The Sheik was outside. He jumped in the ring to interfere in one of the matches. I think it was I think that was they were the original Americans. The Sheik, and I think if it wasn't Nikita, it was Ivan. I think it was Nikita. But I think it was Nikita Koloff. I have to go back to the credits. I'm not sure. But unless you're a tag team, you didn't really have that. You know what I mean?
But as you said with tag teams, it was really like the Von Erichs and the Freeboards, because they were really the only tag teams that were around, and it's just like they were massive. That rivalry was huge. They were selling out stadiums for 6-man tag team matches, which I feel like you wouldn't even get nowadays. I actually think, like, I just think wrestling itself just sells out. But back in the day, that's what sold out a lot of arenas and even stadiums, was that rivalry. Because I remember seeing documentaries about it, and the Fabulous Freeboards were the cool Michael Hayes with the blonde hair, the rock and roll, like they were literally the cool faction, where the Von Erichs were the wrestling faction. Like they were the ones that were the craft, you know, were the best wrestlers and stuff, you know. They were the gimmicks, but they were the wrestlers. And that's what made the divide, but that's what told a brilliant story with all 6 men.
Yeah.
I don't know if you've ever seen any of the Freeboard shoot interviews, but they've gone on record and stated that the wildest crowd they wrestled in front of was the Von Erichs crowds in Dallas.
Mm.
Not in Dallas. It was outside Dallas, wasn't it?
Think about it, Ben.
It was out. It wasn't in the deep country part of Dallas, but it was out. It was in Texas. The Texas crowds are the crowds they won't remember when they were talking. They're like the Von Erichs are some of their favorite times in wrestling because of the story, the build up. But like it's just, and we're going to delve into it a bit over the next hour. Other families that have had those tragic upbringings. But before we do that, before we move on, we do need to give this film a rating.
Yeah.
But we need to decide how we rate it. Are we going to rate it out of 5?
I think Rob was the last one to see it, so I'll give
Are we going to rate it out of 5? Are we going to rate it out of 10? Are we going to give it out of stars? I think we've been a wrestling film. We should probably do it in stars.
Yeah, I'd rate it out of 10.
I think it has to be an easy 9.5 out of 10.
Yeah.
I think it is one of the better wrestling biopics out there. It definitely is, and it doesn't hold that back like most films would. It tells you their stories the way they should have been told, and they're accurate enough because Kevin was on set and was part of the script writing team, along with executive producer Maxwell Jacob Friedman, who's seen a cut from the film.
Yeah. He wasn't really cut. He was in like probably 5 seconds of when he actually showed his face. It was literally like 5 seconds when he played one of the cousins.
Yeah, so, and you could tell straight away, like once you seen his, his face type of thing, even with different hair type of thing, you knew straight away it was MJF when you see him.
I actually did that in the cinema. I was like, oh, MJF.
I pretty much assumed there was only 2 people in the cinema. I was like, there he is.
I know everyone spotted it when the credits rolled. I know everybody spotted it when the credits rolled, but before the credits rolled, they just figure out who was playing the Sheik.
Oh yeah, Chavo.
But did you know that straight up, or did you know it because of the credits?
No, I knew before the film even started he was playing them.
Yeah, Chavo did the Sheik. Chavo actually trained Zach and the rest of the lads. He was the go-to for wrestling for the choreo. Actually, that's another family that would have wrestled the Von Erichs down in Texas. The Guerreros.
True, yeah, because they would have only broke into the States.
The Funks would have probably been another one.
Yeah, that's true. But like you gave it a 9.5 out of 10, I would give it a 9 because the one thing as well was the performances. I think the performances really told the story too, and like the screenplay, what it was, and it didn't bore me. And I think that's what I love about biopics, that I think when you don't get bored of it and they really are glued to the screen and you're interested to learn new things about what you didn't know before, I think that's what makes this movie great also. But the performances, for me, were like the main part that I was like, they done that to a T. And I think if they were really like not interested and boring, I would have probably given it a lower score. But everyone, to a man and woman who acted in that movie, really told a great story for the worse, but for the better, because like we know the Von Erichs as a family now are still living that fucking dynasty of being one of the first wrestling families, especially in the States, that were like in mainstream back in the day, well known, and it's still going to this day. So I'd give it a 9 out of 10.
Yeah. And another thing I think they need to be applauded for as well is like some films have changed things to save a buck. But they didn't. They paid up. They went to NWA and ran at the use the NWA belt. Buck knows how they got to use that other the NWA WCW title.
That was sick.
Buck knows how they got to use that, but they did that. But I think the one thing for me that was attention to detail, they used the Bob Backlund tag belt.
Yeah.
I think that was a really cool one. I think it was a Fandu belt as well they used, which was even cooler. Fandu got a nice shout out on that film, which is well deserved because he does really good belts and at affordable prices. So I think they didn't hold back. The attention to detail was there the whole way through. It's just, I don't think I could fault it by the stuff with Kerry, but other than that,
what would you give it, Rob?
Yeah, I'd give it a solid 9, definitely a solid 9, because like as I say, the performances of all the actors and actresses that were in that film, to put on a performance to that level and that standard and that type of a setting and things like that, with everything going on, as well with each character type of thing, and the way they were able to portray the characters as well and look the part too as well was just on point, as you say. And as I say, it was one of the best sort of the wrestling biopics that I've seen in a long, long time, if not ever.
Yeah, no, and I think we need more films like that as well. Like, you don't get an awful lot of wrestling biopics, so and there's a lot of families out there, a lot of stories out there. You could do a whole film on the territories, and it'd be entertaining throughout, because the territories were crazy time in wrestling.
Mm.
And I think sort of hitting that market now type of thing, with the Iron Claw being so successful as well, type of thing, that they can actually go down that line of going like, well, you know what, this was actually successful. Let's do another one on another family, or on like I say, the territories, and around in American wrestling.
Yeah.
Yes, we have to wait and see how it does in the box office. But I can't imagine it's done bad, because crowds in America packed in the same when it released in December. Air Cinema was jammed on Saturday night for it. Like, it was jammed.
Yeah,
Like,
I went to see it on Friday night, and it's actually weird though, right? I went on Friday night and there was a lot of couples. I was like, the fuck? I'm like, are these all wrestling fans, or are they just going because Zac Efron's in it?
Jamie's not advertised that as a couples film, because it is fucking not a couples film.
It's not a couples film, but there was couples at it. That's
if
what
you
I
win as a couple,
weird.
if you win as a couple, you will end up not a couple by the end of the film. It's just one of their films.
Probably, yeah. Honestly, that
Well,
didn't
it's not
warn
Valentine's Day, and I was single, so yeah, that's definitely not a couple.
If you haven't seen it, The Iron Claw, it's out in cinemas now. It's fucking unbelievable. Yeah.
That's it.
Was Fritz the original creator of The Iron Claw, or was it Von Rasch?
I'm not sure.
Because Baron Von Rasch did the claw as well.
I'm not sure.
And they would have been both. They would have been both around the same decade of wrestling, Fritz and Baron.
Yeah.
So,
not sure. I don't know. I'm too old.
I don't know either. But this opens the door to so many other things, and I know I can hear people watching it screaming to mention a certain family, and we will. We're going to keep this way, and we're not going to mention that family just yet, because there's other families that need to get plowed in here as well. And I think from one tragedy to another family has just had unfortunate luck in the world of wrestling is the Hart family.
Yeah, absolutely.
I think there's no family more unfortunate, other than the Von Erichs, than what the Harts went through. And what did they still go through, I suppose, in some sense.
Yeah, it literally is. Like, and that's probably one family that I probably looked into the most, because the Von Erichs I knew of, but the Hart dynasty, you do, like, you just look at, that's a big family, and it is like, there's so many different relations of it.
It expands across the pond, because it has British bloodline, it has its Canadian bloodline, and even has US bloodline heritage. So I mean, it
really does. There's just so many, and it's like we know the Hart dynasty. You had Jim, you had Brett, you had Owen, and these are the ones who broke into WWF and they really made a name for themselves. But then you have, Brian Pillman, who, as we were talking before, he's like kind of related through marriage. Then you also have the British Bulldog. So it's like, there's just so many, and not only that, these are all guys who were on a level got to do with not even just tag team wrestling, but like the top card in WWF.
Yeah.
And like, you just look at and go, man, the whole Hart dynasty rivalry as well, because there was this civil war with Brett and Owen that made some really interesting television. But not only that, they had some great matches. Who remembers when Owen Bret Hart, the same night Bret Hart won the WWE Championship of Yokozuna? All these different things that they told in the early 90s was
and
just
the finish of that match is still something that's talked about.
Real, but not only that though, it's one of them type of things that it was very real behind the scenes too. Owen did feel like he belonged in the top. He belonged to be champion.
He definitely
but Brett
did.
was always the favorite.
Yeah, he felt it was baby brother syndrome was basically what it was. Like I've gone on record. I'm not the biggest Brett fan. I just think Brett's a conceited prick. straight out there.
He's a moany
And
cunt.
I know,
say
I
that word,
know,
but it's true.
I know our
He is
mutual
pretty
friend
moany.
Joe Cabray has a massive hard on for Bret Hart, and rightly so, because he is. Back in the day, he was what he said he was, and that was the excellence of execution. But for
Best there
me,
is, the
Owen
best there
Hart
was,
was
the best there
always
ever will
Owen
be.
Hart. For me, Owen Hart was always the better wrestler.
Yeah, I agree too. I'm not saying that because, like, not only this as well, how that man has not got a Hall of Fame yet is beyond me.
So
Like,
I can
he
answer that
has
question
to
for
get
you.
one very soon, like, because he
I
should have
can answer
gotten
that
one a
question for
long
you.
time ago.
That question has been answered on multiple podcasts, and it's been answered by Martha Hart herself. She will not allow WWE to induct him into the Hall of Fame because she doesn't want the wrestler Owen Hart celebrated by the company that more them. So we will probably never see him
It's
inducted
crazy, like.
into the WWE Hall of Fame. Maybe if Vince dies, maybe Vince gets charged. I'm going to jump into him soon, but maybe if Vince gets charged, maybe then we'll see Owen. But the closest we've ever gotten to even the talk of it was when they released the DVD, which apparently took years of negotiating with Martha Hart for it to be released.
Yeah, and I don't blame her too. I really don't blame her because that night was very tragic, and it was such an accident, and there is so much shit that had gone into that and what happened and all, and I don't blame her. But for Owen, for the family, I just think it would be a special night. You know, he probably wouldn't be the main inductee, but I just feel like Brett has now got what, 2 Hall of Fames, you
Yeah.
know, with Jim and for himself. So it like, can you imagine if his brother got inducted too? Like, how emotional that night would be, just to celebrate
hope
Brett,
and pray.
not Brett, Owen Hart, just to celebrate his life, you know.
And I understand 100%. I understand where Martha's coming from, and I agree with her because you've read the stories, you've watched the interviews. Like they, I'm not going to jump into it because it's one of the tragedies of the Hart family. But I think Brian Pillman comes in first there. I think because he lost his life first. I think
Yeah, I think he
he
did.
lost his life shortly after the house invasion scenes.
Yeah, how
I think it
did
was shortly.
he pass away again?
I think he might have took his own life.
He might have. Okay, yeah.
I think he took his own life. I think he might have
Yeah.
had an overdose. I didn't have time to research that like I would have because our esteemed colleague has changed the schedule, so it can't subject to change and all that jazz.
I know I didn't get enough time to do my reschedule, but on me research.
So it is probably one of the most talked about things on TV. And it's when Brian Pillman pulled out a real gun. It wasn't a fake gun. They've got a record to say it was a real gun. When Tim and Steve Austin were doing their angle, and the screen goes black, you hear the gunshot, and I think that's how Raw ended that week. And then you come back the next week expecting the follow up, but I think it didn't happen because that particular week, he died in a car crash. Was it a car crash that killed him?
See,
he died. He died suddenly. It was a tragic death, and I'm gonna get slagged off by all the viewers because they're like, "Why didn't you research it? Didn't have time."
Yeah.
But
do you know what?
Week,
we
didn't
are
know what
wrestling
happened
fans, but our
because
memories do be squashed sometimes. You know, it's like, oh, what happened? I can't remember.
But it was like the following week, it was like, oh, different storyline. We can't really do it because Brian Pillman has passed, and it was just like looking back at it of the wrestlers that we've lost and how they could have been avoided. If like again, men's mental health. If they just weren't afraid to open up, or if they weren't told, if they open up, they were pussies. Like, if you're a man and you feel the need to cry, you let them tears out because it's okay to cry. It's a healthy thing. If God didn't want you to cry, then he wouldn't have fucking given you eyes and tears to come out of them. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like, it's okay not to be okay.
Yeah.
Our DMs are always open. Rob's DMs are always open. Do you want to talk? Reach out to us.
Definitely.
We're always around. We're always active. Yuck the limo.
That's the thing, and obviously, going off the Brian Pillman thing there, he actually died of an unexpected heart disease, is what he died of. So whether that
Rob, I appreciate the research there.
Yeah, well done, Rob.
That's okay. Thanks for Google.
I acknowledge you, my tribal chief, for one night only.
My counselor.
But it was like I say, it was a tragic thing. There was so much potential in and Brian Pillman as a wrestler as well, type of thing. And then, obviously whether he was, as I say, whether he may have been on things beforehand, type of thing. And I think that was the big thing back in the day. There were so many wrestlers that that were on like the steroids and things like that, and so many things that came out of that after. Hence the reason why you've got everything in place now that you're not supposed to be on these things and stuff like that. So you're trying to be, you go to the gym, prefer as best as you can, train hard that way, but rather than taking all these steroids and things like that, because it's a known fact with the likes of steroids, if you're taking anything on top of anything else, it can ruin you completely, and you wouldn't know anything about it at all. And I think that's the thing with the Von Erichs as well, type of thing, what it showed, what it can do as well. And seeing the likes of that as a wrestling fan, as a human as well, type of thing. And that it's one of the things that you don't want to see, and anything bad happen, and especially just potentially, someone who could be actually a world star wrestler, and for that to happen so early in their careers as well, just it was so tragic for both sets of families, and any family that's
really was.
Yeah,
like,
but you even talked about. Sorry, what were you going to say, Tony?
I was going to say, because on the Brian Pillman thing, because it was the most watched segment, I think, in Raw history to this day. It was also the most looked at rivalry, because people are looking forward to Austin and Pillman. And I think, was that on the road to Mania 14? That storyline?
It would have been close to that, yeah.
Mm.
I think that was one of that big feuds going into it, because we were starting to build Pillman up as the next big thing. I think we're just starting to see the light on high flyers, because he was the OG high flyer. Like, this Brian Pillman did shit that would make it back in the day.
Like,
what the
fuck? I hear
fuck?
Brian Pillman was a brilliant tag team wrestler.
He was in a tag team with another Brian, I think, wasn't he?
Yeah, it was called the Pillmans.
Might have been, yeah.
Or the Flying Pillmans.
The Flying Pillmans, yeah.
That was a.
But there you go again. Like, tag team wrestling was huge back in the 90s, huge in the 80s. We were talking about the Hearts. There's not a bigger wrestling tag team family. Obviously, the Von Erichs were huge for one as well, but next to them, and other families, the Hearts are probably one of the most synonymous with tag team wrestling.
Yeah. I mean, you look at tag team wrestling as a whole, even like, in the like sort of like late 80s, early 90s, obviously you have like the Demolition, Legion of Doom, Bushwhackers, the Rockers, all that type of thing. And seeing the likes of them, sort of, obviously they've obviously seen the likes of these ones coming through, like the Von Erichs and, and Freebirds and things like that, and seeing how well they can do as a tag team, and having, chemistry with, with whether it's family or friends or whatever type of thing. I'm just joining up like that. I mean, you look at Demolition, for example, obviously 3 of them, Axel, Smash, and Crush. Like, you don't get any bigger and badder than that.
True. But like, there you go, you talked about so many tag teams there, but like, can you imagine if like the Von Erichs were a part of WWE, like, in hindsight, if none of this ever happened, like, what could have been? Because we could have seen so many great matches with the Von Erich family, with the Hart Dynasty family, and then like, you even look at with professional wrestling nowadays with the trios tag titles. Can you imagine if you had something like that back in the day in terms of WWF, and go like Von Erichs versus the Hart Dynasty for the tag belts? Like, that could have made for unbelievable television, and I'd say the pay-per-views would have been, like with the Fabulous Freebirds, they would have been ginormous numbers, because of the interest of all.
Like, especially like sort
I
of
mean,
in the late 90s, when you had like a lot of 6-man tag team matches type of thing, to have like, even in those days, if you had had a 6-man tag team, belt type of thing then, but from the WWF side of things, that would have been huge for them. And that,
it would have.
Obviously, the way the AEW have now got the trios tag team titles type of thing, the same sort of kind of way, sort of thing. And that's what I think, was great for that, because there's so many, you always see so many 6-man tag team matches type of thing, throughout the years, and not to have like a championship dedicated to that as well, is, I think they could be losing out on that.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the issue there as well was in the mid to late 90s, in most promotions. Actually, I think ECW might be excluded there. It was for actually all present there, innit? It was faction palooza. You couldn't walk into a company without there being a big faction.
It's like nowadays, right? It's like you see big factions nowadays in professional wrestling with the bloodline of WWE. You also have, like, I wouldn't say they're big now because they're only new, but you have the Undisputed Kingdom in AEW. You also have the the Acclaimed, because that's with, you know, Billy Gunn. You also have Bullet Club Gold, Bullet Club in New Japan. Just so many factions on professional wrestling, you know, in every company.
Yeah, big factions.
And I think stop plugging out TT. They'll get that chance. But I think, as well as Pillman is such a tragedy, I think he did leave something behind that has somewhat turned into a really cool gift for us. And that is Brian Pillman Jr., now known as Lexus King.
Mm-hmm.
Whereas the legacy is continuing. We get to see Brian in his son, because they literally mirror image. Like, you can't not look at Lexus or Brian Pillman Jr. and not
it's
see.
scary, but it's true.
Yeah, and that's sort of a thing I'd love to see. Obviously, with Alexis King, and obviously you've got Braun Breaker there. Obviously, the Steiner brothers type of thing, you know, son sort of thing. So if you had that, you know, as in coming through, you've got, you know, Brian Pillman's son coming through. If you got any of the Von Erichs ones coming through and stuff like that, you know.
And then just a couple of years later, then I think, which is probably still known as the biggest tragedy in professional wrestling, and I would stand by that, was the very untimely death of perhaps the greatest technician, greatest in-ring wrestler to ever grace the squared circle, Owen Hart. All because Vince was actually, people give out saying Vince was out of touch now. Vince was somewhat out of touch back then as well, because nobody wanted to see Owen Hart dressed up with the blue blazer. They wanted Owen Hart in the pink and black. They wanted to watch him wrestle. They wanted to watch him do his thing. I think it was
made of a joke in the Attitude Era, especially in the early stages. He was made of a joke.
It was 99 they started making him a joke. So it was mid-99 when they started doing the blue blazer, because he was still kind of in the nation doing the Enough is Enough stuff with Jeff Jarrett, which was really cool to watch because it was really entertaining. But I was actually watching Rumble 99 back there a few weeks ago in the run-up to the Rumble, and I looked at it thinking, Owen Hart should have won that Rumble. Owen Hart should have went down to Mania to face whoever the world champion was, because you could have feuded Rock and Austin into Mania, not Rock and Austin, Austin and Vince into Mania, and had a huge stipulation style match. That would have made more sense than the match that we got, which was corporate Rock against Austin. But listen, I love the Rock Austin trilogy, but I still think Owen Hart should have won the 99 Rumble.
As you even said though as well though, you look at like Owen Hart should have won that year's Rumble in '99, but he probably should have won it like years before. Like he should have won it probably the year after Brett won the WWE title. But I don't know if I'm wrong now. Anyone who was watching this can actually correct me because I'm a youngin'. I think around that same time as well, like Shawn Michaels and Razor Ramon were the two guys who were also having unbelievable banger matches, who were up there in the Intercontinental title picture. But then I think Shawn Michaels the year after won the Royal Rumble and then bet Brett in the Iron Man match. I could be wrong, but I just knew that if that was Owen Hart, I think that would have been so good for him for his career. I think he probably, other than Shawn Michaels who won it that year, probably should have won it the year after, because he did. He deserved it. He had the best matches around that time.
And he showed us he was main event caliber. Look at the match he had with Austin for the IC title. Yes, Austin got injured. Was that Owen Hart's fault? Maybe. Was it Austin's fault? Maybe. Takes two to tango.
It's an accident.
Still a great match.
Still
a great match up until the accident. Well, Austin says it himself. It was an accident. You know what I mean? It was a great match. It was a great match, and it showed Owen Hart's skill. It showed that Owen Hart could hang with the big guys. He could be a world champion. Now I know Owen Hart going into '99 was still covered in the stigma of Brett leaving, the screw job. That's a video for itself. I'm not going into that. That's not a tragedy. That was fucking justice. Fuck you, Brett.
Brett, screw Brett. And that right,
exactly.
Tony, he screwed himself.
And 2023, into 2024, Vince screwed Vince, and we're getting into that shortly. Bear with me. But he should never be in the blue blazer. As Martha said, he should never have been up there. He should never have been Lord Down. And she was told they brought in a world-class crew. You tell me a world-class crew that uses quick-release safety clips.
Yeah.
Like, he weighed more than the weight needed to release that if he moved an inch, which he was going to move coming down because he was told to wave his hands. Like, it's another death that could have been avoided, should have been avoided, but as we refer to Trent as Babs, back in the day, Vince was Babs, and Babs got what Babs wanted. Yeah. But he wouldn't even end the show. He wouldn't even end the wrestlers are distraught the rest of the night. You could see it, and we wouldn't even end the show. We continued it.
Even Jim Ross, I still like to this day can think about Jim Ross announcing it on television, going
Still,
like, Owen Hart
it's
is
still
dead.
a hard thing to watch. I think I've watched that event maybe once, maybe twice, and I think it's still the hardest stuff to watch. Like it's like
I think that should have been just erased. Like I don't know why that's still in. Like it's still around to this day. Like I
but
don't know
you
how.
can't. I think on every internet network, well, it's still that way. Netflix haven't got it. It's heavily edited, so there's no. You don't see Jerry on the. You don't see Jerry Lawler or Jim Ross talk about the incident. The incident's completely whacked over. It goes from whatever the match was before it to the Jeff Jarrett match after it. So it's like completely cut and taken out.
Yeah.
But you're right. It's one of the things
I
that
don't
been
agree
locked
with
in the
it,
vault.
to be honest. I've never
I
watched it
don't either.
before in my life, but I should be just erased. Just like, listen, that should just be something that should be gone. If they can, and the funny part is, if they can erase everything else, they can erase that, and that's what I find funny about WWE.
Yeah, if they can try to erase Brock Lesnar, they can try to erase that. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
I feel there's going to be a two-parter looking at what time we have left. But if it's a two-parter, we will come back to it because there's so much to talk about here. Just we're stuck for time tonight, unfortunately, but we will come back to it if we have to. But moving swiftly on, because we do still have a good bit of time. Another death that I believe was very much avoidable if the right people had been around this gentleman. And this is probably one of the most over wrestlers of the 80s and 90s, the British Bulldog. Which, again, another member of the Hart family. I think he married one of the sisters.
Yeah.
I think it was a Brett. Yeah, I can't remember which one of them.
Like, I think he disappeared for a couple of years and he came back. I think, late 99, early 2000s, wearing the denim as the British Bulldog, David White Smith. And he just wasn't used right. Like, again, he's another talent that is like a main event star, and they use them like they'd use the Brooklyn Brawler. And no disrespect to the Brooklyn Brawler, we love him. But like Bulldog, Brawler, one is here, one is there. But when Vince booked them in the 1990,000, they were both here. Like,
he is one of them wrestlers that you look at, and he could have been WWE champion. But there's so many wrestlers in the 90s who could have been champion. You're Mr. Perfect, Jake the Snakes, you're Roddy Pipers. You have so many, but he's definitely up there in the category of like should have been at least one title reign WWE champion. Because
I think
he is. Because like you think about the market, they did a SummerSlam in Wembley, and it did
sold out.
Brilliant crowd. The IC title was in the main event. He bet Brett. It was a brilliant, wholesome moment. And it started off kind of the trend of going over to the UK now and actually doing events. And he was the top guy for the UK fans. So can you imagine if he became, I could be wrong in saying this, imagine if he was the first British wrestler at the time to win it. That could have been monumental.
He should have been. Brett, that match was a great match, that IC title match, and British Bulldog stole that Wembley venue out himself. Everyone went to see Bulldog, and I won't hear an argument against it. And I think Brett had the wrong title going into that event, and I think Brett should have been the world champion going into that event. But Vince has gone to Vince as he did. But I just think it's another tragic death. And Rob can jump in here because I could probably shoot myself in the foot like I have done this whole episode. Did he die of an overdose or a heart attack?
I'm nearly sure it was a heart attack. I haven't actually done my research on the Bulldogs.
But was it a heart attack due to?
I'm not 100% sure, but I know it was. As I say, I can remember. Obviously, that hearing the passing of his death and that, but didn't really hear too much at the time surrounding what actually happened as such. But I mean, any loss like that in wrestling, it's always tragic. Whether it's suicidal, whether it's due to a drug overdose or anything like that. Anything like that is tragic. But
again, he's another wrestler whose legacy lives on in his daughter, who goes around and does like promotional stuff. I think she's worked with WWE to do stuff in his name as well. Like I met her at Clash at the Castle. And she's such a lovely woman. She's so nice to talk to.
Yeah, she really is. I met her over at Money was it the Money Bank or was it Clash at the Castle last year? I think it was Clash at the Castle.
She was at Money in the Bank, but she wasn't around at the store all day like she was Clash because for some reason it was a smaller superstore. I don't know.
Yeah, because Because they had her at Clash of Castle, because I got a couple of pictures and stuff with her and had a nice chat with her and stuff, and obviously she
That's
had,
right. I
the
shout out to the
British
security
stuff.
guard there. 'Cause he let me skip right in. There was like thousands lined up when I was chatting to him. He was like, "Your friends in there, go on in." And I went straight over to the whole matter.
Yeah,
But
no,
she was actually, she was
she
like,
was.
"Do you know that security guard?" I was like, "No, but he's really friendly." I'll say. She does like she'd start any stories. She doesn't love fans come up and chatting to her, interacting with her, and telling them like, "Oh yeah, that's one of the reasons I love wrestling and I watch it to this day." And
Yeah.
I know it sounds cliche that an Irish fan love the British wrestler because Brits are cunts, Brits are this that, but like the British Bulldog was like
He was a big
one of the
inspiration to British
really
wrestlers
was.
for years. You
Oh
know,
yeah.
for what the wrestlers you see nowadays, everyone should at least say or should say that British Bulldog is one of the big influences for why they become a
But they have
professional wrestler, especially from
uh,
overseas in Britain. Like,
they have in fairness to them. Like Wade Barrett has said he's one of his inspiration to getting into wrestling. What are British wrestlers?
William
Actually, some
Regal
Irish
has to
wrestlers have
be.
said it as well. Regan has said it. Sheamus, some of the lads that wrestle on the independent scene will tell you that one of the reasons they do it is because they went to Emily and they saw him and they wanted to be him.
Yeah,
So
he did.
he's not here, but he's still here in spirit,
Yeah.
inspiring a new generation
And
wrestlers.
he's so historic in British wrestling as well, Tony. And he is
Actually,
that.
the
He's the
Knight
first
family
big
is a
British
big one.
wrestler to go into WWE in the States and actually represent Britain. Because no, and like you have so many nationalities in WWE nowadays that represent their
Yeah.
country. But when you go back in the day and you are not from the States and you represent your country, like even Andre did. Andre represented his country in a way. He was a big star. He wasn't from the States, but he represented his country. And British Bulldog was one of them wrestlers too. He represented Britain in everything he did got to do with
Yeah.
WWF. And one of the big reasons now they
And
went to SummerSlam for Wembley was because of him.
yeah, and Andre again, unfortunately, is another wrestler that died doing what he loved.
Mm.
Unfortunately, but yeah, he's inspired a whole flock of wrestlers, and he's there in spirit because of them.
Yeah.
Like I think some wrestlers have even used the colours to pay tribute to him at events. A big one for me actually, I thought about when we were talking was the Knight family.
Yeah.
Soraya said it. I got to do what Bulldog did. I got to walk into Wembley and walk out a champion.
Mm.
Yeah.
You know, it's it's just they're gone, but they're still here in spirit.
Oh, yeah.
They've left their mark.
Yeah, like
When they gone too soon, fucking too right they were gone too soon. Could it have been avoided? Absolutely, if the right support system was put in place.
But imagine if you had
Oh,
matches like the British
if
Bulldog
they,
and Owen Hart for
yeah,
WWE titles. Like imagine them sort
yeah.
of matches happening.
Like I
You know,
think
they
back
could have
then
been
there
brilliant
wasn't
matches.
like today's wrestling standards. The wrestlers get a mental and health check, I think, once a week. Back then they didn't.
No, they
No.
didn't.
And the result, we all seen the result back then.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's just one of those things.
Like the thing with mental health is the fact that it's only really sort of, how would I say it in a good way, sort of, it's really kind of only grown over the past sort of 15 to 20 years. You're only really hearing about it properly. Whereas like back then, you didn't really, it wasn't really known as a thing, sort of thing. So even if you were having a problem, like, like I say, especially with men, didn't really talk, but didn't really say anything about it type of thing. They just took action on themselves and that was it. Whereas like even nowadays, they're still doing the same thing, but at least there's that help support system out there. But it's just how to take it and how to get it about the right way. And obviously, yes, there's all these numbers and all these professionals that you can try and ring, but it's also it's okay having that. But then it's taking that leap forward of actually talking to someone about it. It's easier said than done because so many people are going through so many different things in their lives, and it's not exactly easy to explain to someone. Just even a simple message saying there's always someone there, because there is always someone there, but it's whether
there is absolutely. Like I've said it earlier, the DMs are open for reach out to my actual Instagram account. It's not on private. You should be able to get in there, hand a message to me or Facebook, the same the lads. I read the Controversies, and we're happy to openly chat with you. You know what I mean? And I think that's a great thing with today's product is the fans. Like people put saying, "Oh, I'm going to be honest, it's safe." I'm like, "Fuck yeah, wrestling fans are the safest people to be around." Like you see at shows, like you see at shows, you've got lads that have been going to shows, like forever. Like the likes of me, the Alborns, the Robs, the other Rob. We've all like we're there. Like, come talk to us, chat to us. We'll chat to you. Like we're not going to leave you around. Like you want to make new friends. A wrestling venue is the best place to do it, especially in a small intimate setting.
Yeah, big
Yeah,
time.
man.
Like that's how like I say that's how we've all met. It's been through obviously OTT and other independent shows. It's the fact that seeing like yourselves at shows chatting away, whether it's having a drink afterward, beforehand, or whatever, having chat, and that's like especially over the past couple of years has helped me big time because of what I've went through, and that's been a big part of getting over my mental health with what's happened in my life as well. And the fact that you've been there for me to go through that has been it's been unbelievable for me. And because if it hadn't been for wrestling, it hadn't been, if I had said to myself, like whenever my mum passed away, even whenever my dad passed away, this is something I want to do, is just to go out down to Dublin, do these shows and stuff, and that meet new people and get new friends and things like that. And I say he's been, some of my best mates since that. And
yeah,
I couldn't be more prouder.
I'm going to jump in because I haven't spoken in a while. So, hey, I'm on this episode.
Hey,
I'm not silent. I'm not on mute. But no, honestly, Rob has hit the nail on the head. And I keep talking about beauties of professional wrestling. And that's my favorite. It's the interaction. No matter if it's with fans or the wrestlers with the fans, no matter what promotion it is. Well, we know with OTT, we talk to all the wrestlers, all the guys and girls, even Joe Cabray, who actually has openly admitted and all in interviews that that's what OTT is really about too. It's all about getting people to, get together, interact. If you have a problem, especially with the wrestlers, So even Foxy and all even said in one of the interviews, there were some wrestlers who kind of fell out of love with it. And some of the like Callum Blacks, your Logan Bryces, these people who went and like do other things in life, came back for the local rumble, and I just had that one appearance, but they felt good about themselves, and that's what's important.
Yeah,
it's the beauty about professional wrestling is you go out there, and no matter if you're a wrestler or you're a fan, you go out there and you enjoy yourself, you interact, you get to meet new people, and you take your time with it too, because we all love that's the one thing we have in common. We all love professional wrestling. We're all there for the one thing, and Rob said it there, right? It's one of them things you kind of get choked up about, because it's helped him go through things, and it will help you go through things, because you could then talk to us about your wrestling opinions, and that's it. We're not going to judge. We're not going to tell you you're wrong and you're right. It's your opinions.
We're not
we
here to
all have
judge.
opinions.
I think that's the thing, is that people are afraid, are they going to judge me? I will not judge. So we're not here to judge. We are here to help. Whatever you need, whatever you're going through, you feel like you're at the end of your tether, reach out. It doesn't have to be us. It doesn't have to be Weekend Controversies. It can be the lads at FiveMarks. If you reach out to any of the wrestlers that openly will respond to the end, and there's quite a lot of them, they will chat to you, they will talk to you.
Yeah, honestly. But I was going to say, Tony, as well, like, I went to OTT for the first time in 2017 for Scrappermania 3, and I fell in love with Irish wrestling, and I knew about the scene, and I was afraid. I was afraid to meet people. I was just going to the big shows, and I wasn't really talking to a lot of people, and I was like, right, I want to get big into the Irish scene and go to shows. And then I met you, I met Dean, I met so many other guys, and then, of course, over the, last couple of years, I met Martin, Carmo, Rob, Emma, all these different people too, and it's great that I got to meet all of you and like go to shows which is on a regular basis. And it's the same with people who watch this or even watch the FiveMarks or any YouTube channel got to do with Irish wrestling. If you're only a newcomer and you want to get into the OTT scene, we're normally the people that go to the shows. Don't be afraid to say hi. If you've got a favorite that has been around for years, so for example, if you love Barry, if you love Sam, if you love The Draw, say it to us and we'd be like, oh yeah, we love them guys too. Like, and you can go up and talk to them. That's what it is. That's the beauty of professional wrestling. Don't care if you're new or fucking old. You can watch it because we can all agree with it. Yeah,
like I'm enjoying this road to WrestleMania. Am I a little pissed what's going on at the moment? Absolutely, but I'm loving it because we all were so vocal in our opinions. 50% wanted Cody and Roman Reigns. The other 50% wanted The Rock and Reigns, and we're just going like that. Not you didn't need to do a comedy route, but we're being wrestling fans.
Yeah, it's opinion.
Like we're on the road to WrestleMania, and I think it's the first time I think in about 10 years I've been excited for a road to WrestleMania.
In my opinion,
Because
this
it's
is
just-
this
so
is the,
exciting for
it's
this
just being
WrestleMania.
it's just being
Yeah.
the fans have made it for me. Like
this,
I just said,
like
it's
this to
like-
me is going to be one of the biggest roller coaster rides we're going to be on for a long time. Come to WrestleMania, a long time, because it's so split down the middle. Even people who want, whether it's Cody to win, whether they want Roman to win now, not knowing going into WrestleMania what's actually going to even happen on night 1 or night 2 for the main event. Because obviously we know we're going to get Roman and Cody Rhodes, but what are we going to get in between that? We're going to get that tag team match. It's just when. It's not going to be at the Chamber,
but like,
but it's going to be night 1. And that's.
I mean, and
Love
listen,
it.
we'll jump more into the road to WrestleMania and all that next week, because next week we're going balls deep in here, because we've the last stop on the road to WrestleMania 40.
Yeah.
And I believe it's the first Mania in 40 years that I see no bastard won't be in gorilla position. So I think we can drink a bottle of whiskey to that.
Yeah, absolutely.
And
Can
I
I
think
just say
back
one
what
thing
Rob-
though? Can I just say one thing?
Yeah.
Right? Because I know we have to end this now, and then we've talked about it. Vince McMahon.
Yeah, we've
should have
15 plus
left.
minutes. I keep me on the time.
Yeah. But Vince McMahon should have fucking left years ago, because this is a lot of catching up now that WWE have to do. And thank fuck that man is caught for everything that he has done. And good riddance to the prick. That's all I have to say.
So I did say we were going to delve into that particular person, but we cannot do that in 15 minutes. So instead, because I like the route Rob was going with the whole mental health thing, and we continue with
Which
that
we
for the
all
last 15
said,
minutes.
yeah.
Because like I think we can all say that being a wrestling fan has helped us in some shape or form. Like,
Yeah.
I couldn't walk up to wrestlers that long speaking to words than when I first started going to these shows.
No.
I was not the social butterfly you see now hosting a podcast with Jamie Brown. I had to be pushed in. I
never thought
I
I'd
had to be
actually
pushed
here on
into
an
this
actual
social
podcast
butterfly.
talking about wrestling, because my wrestling
know.
knowledge isn't as good as used to. But and that's another thing. It shouldn't matter. Like, if you love
Doesn't
wrestling,
matter.
it's your own knowledge. You know,
Yeah.
no one is going to judge you
Like-
for what you know. So what if you're a casual? So what if you're a hardcore? That's not just. It's not none of anyone's business.
No, because
It's
we're all
you and
we're all
your
wrestling
actual
fans.
wrestling.
No matter whether you've either watched wrestling for a year, whether you've watched it for 30 years, you're always a wrestling fan, no matter what,
Exactly.
and that's what matters.
Yeah, exactly. And like I said, it's helped me greatly. Like my mental health is as healthy as it is because I get to go to these shows, because I have pro wrestling in my life. It's one of the reasons. I have a plethora of reasons, but it's one of the main reasons. Like, people will be like, "Oh, you're in your 30s and you like professional wrestling. Why?" Because it fucking saved me life. Without it, I'd probably left this planet years ago. And that's the whole word of my life. I've gone through shit in my life. Shit in my life that's had me at the lowest of my lowest. And I got out of that because of pro wrestling, because I got to go to events, the venues, and meet the people like the Albons, the Clearfloods, the Robs. Do you know what I mean? Like, they're a friendly bunch, and everyone's like, we're a family. Like we went right to Hooked on Wrestling 2 weeks ago, and it wasn't like Brits, Americans, Scots. It was wrestling fans. We were one family. There was no race. There was no nationality. We went around talking to everyone. I spent 30 minutes with SoCal Val, 30 minutes with the owner of Progress, back and forth with Tugboat, Typhoon and Fred off. We made two new friends that we're still in contact with.
Yeah, Aaron and Mark, shout out to them boys.
It was just debut with us next week.
Well,
they're very vocal
that's it,
in their
yeah.
opinion. So,
So,
well,
like, that's it, Tony. Like, I met the two lads. I met a fella from Derry. I also got to meet the Cultaholic lads. Got to meet, Matthew from Botchamania, and they were all cool. It might have been a little like talker. So, like, Tom Campbell was probably the one out of everyone that I was talking to the most, and he followed the FiveMarks on X and all. And he was so sound. He was down to earth. He was interested in what I was telling them about the concept of weekly controversies and the FiveMarks, and he loved it because he said it like he loves that we have this commitment with pro wrestling and trying to make it a content and a hobby, because he's done it before. He's done radio presenting, and now he's done Cultaholic.
Yeah.
He loves that people are going out there, even if it's a small little fan base, and it's only like a few hundred subscribers and a few hundred views. So what? At least he's saying, like, if you're enjoying it, that's the main part. And
exactly,
I love doing this every week. Even the one time if I got sick, and I apologize. I love doing
Don't get sick. Don't get sick.
What?
I think another thing on the whole, because I believe this gentleman was on his own to Hook the Wrestling, but it showed me the power of being a wrestling fan. A gentleman collapsed. I believe he was having a seizure of sorts, but he collapsed just as the women's rumble was starting. And the bar staff hadn't a clue what to do. The security were clearly not trained, but 5 or 6 wrestling fans jumped up. They knew to put them in the recovery position. They knew that they knew that they were trained. They knew what they had to do.
Oh, actually,
So if
did
that
you
case
tell me
meant,
that?
yeah, I think I did, yeah. But
Right, okay.
because they were there, they knew what they were doing. There was no photo, there was no recording it. They helped them, and I'm sure he was told how he was helped by. Most people would be scared and not go back to an event after that. I'm sure he thinks I'm safe not to go back to an event like that because there's people there that are looking out for me.
Mhm.
You know what I mean? Like
Absolutely.
you could see it.
Yeah.
Like we're a family. We look out for one another. That's what we do. Like I go
Yeah.
around at intermissions and shows, and I'll talk to people, ask me how they're doing, ask me how they're getting on. You know what I mean? Like
But
I'm good friends with a lot of the roster.
Yeah, true. But as I was like, I'm actually going to OTT now on Saturday, which I'm gonna get to at the end before we actually outro this episode. But I'll be there on Saturday. I'll be there with people I know. So if you watch this and you see my face, come say hi. Don't be afraid to say hi. I'll be there for you. If you want to chat, you want to talk about what's going on in the show, what you think's gonna happen coming up to Scrapmania. Honestly, do, because we will talk to anybody and we'll have a chat about wrestling, even if it's 5 minutes or a half an hour. We will chat about it. So if you are coming to the show on Saturday and you see me, don't be afraid to say hi, because I'll say hi back and I'll talk to you about professional wrestling.
Yeah, and I won't be there, unfortunately, because I have other commitments. I have to go get stuff sorted for my friend's wedding, which he is, for some stupid reason, asked me to be his best man. I think he needs his head examined. Here we are. I can't make that show, unfortunately. Which I think, Jay, I know people are telling you it's not a big show, it's not a special show, but it technically is it is a special show. I've actually talked to members of D16 staff. So it's sold out, and I know everyone's saying, oh, it's only holding 50, 60 people. I have it on good authority that venue seats 200 people. So that's not the ton that's in it, but 200 people in the community hall in Sheriff Street for wrestling is huge.
Yeah, honestly,
especially given it's advertised as the return of Sheriff Street's own Justin Daniels.
Yeah, his first wrestling match against Scotty Davis, and like he hasn't wrestled in like over a year, probably a year and a half. So seeing him back in ODT is gonna be great.
I'm kicking myself. I won't get to see that, but I'll have stuff sorted. I know Jamie's going to be vlogging and putting up stuff and chats, and maybe even get some interviewers if he's up to it with some of the lads who knows.
Yeah, but listen, I have the FiveMarks show ready. I'll be representing, of course. I'll be talking to all the lads in intermission or even after the show, and then I won't bore them to death, but I'll just see how they are. And then listen, I'm looking forward to it. Honestly, stay tuned to the Weekly Controversies Instagram page, because I will be doing I'm gonna actually say this now. I have an idea to do the preview of all the matches for the shows in 60 seconds or less, because we don't want to bore you with all the chat. We just want 60 seconds or less, all the matches, go through them, and then we can then try and get a poll for all you guys to make your predictions for this Saturday's event. And if you are there, we can all enjoy it, because I think some say it's a house show. I don't care if it's a house show. Some of the matches on there are absolute bangers.
Oh, they're all bangers, to be fair. I'm ready to miss it, but unfortunately, adults are going adult.
Yeah.
But it's sold out, so I won't be missed because it's sold out, which I'm not surprised. It's just again, I won't make it that show, but I'm planning, money willing, to be at all 3 Gap Party shows. Again, money willing. So if you see me or any of that there, come up to us, don't be afraid, chat to us, we'll chat to you. If you're around looking for some of the zippy side, listen, I took Jamie and I'll take you in. I take in the offering. That's what I do. I'm a benevolent person.
I'm gonna whisper, he can't fucking stand me, and I haven't been paid for this shit. But I digress. So before we go into
this message is being paid for, and bought by.
Before we get into the outro Weekly Controversies, I just want to give out the socials to everybody. Of course, the FiveMarks podcast on YouTube, on Instagram, on Spotify, and this is something I haven't said yet, on X. We are also part of the FiveMarks podcast, Weekly Controversies, here on YouTube. on Instagram, where we'll be doing the vlog for Saturday's OTT, and I'll be doing the preview and predictions so everyone can get involved. We're also on Spotify if you want to relax, get comfortable, and listen to our squeaky fucking voices. And on X, where we try our best to be on that much because it's mostly the other social medias that we have posted on. So, Tony, floor is yours.
And to add to that, before I say goodbye, also exclusively on YouTube is our new series as part of the FiveMarks and Weekly Controversies podcast. It's Controversial Chats. Our first episode dropped yesterday with Boots, and from what I've been told, it's been a big hit. And next Tuesday, our second episode, which is a big one, and it's one not to be missed, and I promise you it's not one to be missed. It is with the new MVP of Irish professional wrestling. I will battle anyone on that. The Kingslayer, Jay. So stay tuned for that next Tuesday.
Looking forward to that interview.
It is one not to be missed. Believe that. But on that note,
what's crazy though is, Tony, that's perfect because this Saturday Jay is up against Big Boots Murphy.
Actually,
so that's a big match.
Jay, if you're watching this, Jamie will let you know if you haven't seen it that Tuesday you get your chance to shine because you gave it your all.
Can I just say, by the way, as well, can I just say your laugh when Martin called me instead of you was brilliant yesterday. Your laugh was, I was repeating that every 30 seconds. You were just like, your laugh was just amazing because he literally said Jamie. So, Martin, I thank you, my love, for having me in your thoughts. Right, so, Tony.
And on that note, this will have to be a continuation to come back to, and we will come back to it because it's a topic that I have a great sense for, but we will come back to it. If you ever want to come on, don't be shy, hit us up. We let you know what the topic is. If it's a topic that suits you and you're an opinionated prick like the rest of us, join us. Come on.
Yeah.
We're open to our wrestling fan podcast for wrestling fans by wrestling fans. So let us know. Absolutely. But on that note, he's been Jo, I've been Tony, and if we don't get cancelled, we will see you next week, same time, Friday, 6 p.m. GMT on Spotify, YouTube, and wherever podcasts are found. Thank you for joining us. I've been Tony once again. He's been Jay. Signing off.